episode of Zone Coverage. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Root, as always, ready to talk about some Week 7 NFL action, what went down over the weekend. It was a kind of disappointing in a way. I mean, only 13 games, a lot of good teams on the byes. I know the morning window only had 6 games, and so it wasn't the most action-packed, but there is obviously still a lot of stuff to talk about, so we are going to do that. We can get into, I think we can kind of just put both of our takeaways together here on this one because they happened in the same game. So you can lead with yours, and then I'll follow you up.
Yeah, so I mean, we got to talk at least a little bit about the Ravens losing to the Bengals here, because honestly, I was pretty shocked to see the Ravens kind of fall apart like that. I mean, considering, Lamar Jackson has put up some insane games this entire season, and he's obviously one of the premier, MVP candidates of this league right now. But yet again, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase connection just it keeps getting better and better, and it's shocking me more and more every game because, I think obviously a lot of people were raising eyebrows when they picked Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell, but it's so far been, I would argue it's been the best draft pick of this entire class, just in terms of production. I mean, no, Lord knows the number 1 and 2 overall picks aren't doing much, other than losing a lot of games and throwing a lot of interceptions. Trey Lance isn't doing a whole lot, and Jamar Chase has easily been the most, electrifying receiver rookie from this class. So it continues to shock, and this AFC North division, I mean, it's still undecided. It's still wide open to me because the Bengals just keep shocking every single week. Even the Steelers are 500 still, I believe. And you got the Ravens and the Browns, of course, duking it out too. I mean, the AFC North is up there for one of the most competitive divisions right now.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of wrote everybody, we thought everybody would be competing except for the Bengals, and now the Bengals are on top of the AFC.
They're actually number 1 in the conference, I think.
Yeah, top of the AFC. I mean, it's some tiebreaker stuff. There's a few teams that are, a handful of teams that are 4-2. But, I mean, my takeaway is that the Bengals, not only are the Bengals good, but their defense is, getting up there to elite status. But when you shut Baltimore down, hold them to 17 points. That's a pretty damn good game. And, just looking at some of their stats, they have allowed the 5th fewest points, and they are not playing, some cupcake schedule. They've got games on there. I mean, they've played the Packers. They held them to 25 in overtime. They've now held the Ravens to 17. I believe they have some other competitive games on there. So they're not, beating up on some of these other teams that are just down in the dumps. But their rush defense is pretty good, eighth fewest rushing yards, and then Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard are forming a potentially elite pass rushing duo. Hendrickson was a big free agent signing from the Saints. He's tied for 4th, I believe, 6.5 sacks. And then Hubbard is within the top 25 with 4, and then throw in some other good plays. I know we talked about Logan Wilson a few weeks ago getting some interceptions. They've obviously got Chidobe Awuzie at corner, and then Jesse Bates is an up-and-coming safety. So the defense, it's not a lot of names that a bunch of people know. There's no more Geno Atkins or Carlos Dunlap or, some of these guys that have been around for a while, but they're building a formidable group there. And we kind of talked about the Bengals last week and saying, I think they're on the cusp to be good, but not necessarily get into that top tier. We're still going to see how it plays out because they have an incredibly tough schedule, but they are, making their claim as a legitimate playoff team.
And it's shocking to think that this is Joe Burrow's 2nd year in the league, coming off of his rookie year where he did not get his first win before he got his first tie. So, I mean, he came off.
He didn't play the full year. He got injuries coming out, torn ACL.
Injury. Everyone said, you got to protect Burrow. You got to protect Burrow. Well, they're going to get his number 1 option from his LSU days and just give him the ball and make it work. everybody was thinking with this Bengals team for the past couple of years in terms of offense, obviously AJ Green was a name a number of years ago, but it was always, oh, Joe Mixon, he's a great running back. But too bad he plays for the Bengals. Oh, it's Joe Mixon. It's Joe Mixon. Now it's Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase that is running this Cincinnati offense.
And I mean, the O-line could end up being an issue, like we say, when they get into some better games. I mean, he has been sacked 17 times. That's within the top 10. So, the O-line is probably still the thing that will hold this team back if there is one. So, obviously Jamar Chase is looking like a great pick, but that offensive line does still need addressing and, shoring up. So, not that it's, completely solved. I want to go on to mine real quick, just because it's also about the Bengals, but Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts, are on the path to superstardom. Obviously, Jamar Chase has been on that path since about week 1, and he's been doing things that nobody else has done. But Kyle Pitts is starting to show out in these past 2 games. Obviously, they had the bye week in between those. He had 160 something yards, 163, I think, second most receiving yards. Behind Jamar Chase, I believe, out of everybody last week. And just looking at kind of the numbers, they're at Kyle Pitts is now on pace for 1,047 yards. The rookie tight end record is 1,076, set by Mike Ditka. So not currently on pace for it, but the pace he is playing in these past couple of games, he could, this was a number that people were throwing around in the offseason, saying Kyle Pitts could have the best rookie tight end season of all time. It certainly, looks like it's happening now. They're, playing him on the outside and just throwing it deep to him, and he's using that incredible athleticism. It's pretty insane. And then Jamar Chase is on pace for 1,566. The rookie record set in 1960 was 1,473. But if you go post-merger, then it's Justin Jefferson last year with 1,400. So he's on pace to kind of shatter both of those. And, I mean, that seems almost like a given at this point. He's not only, the best rookie receiver, he's starting to make a case as one of the top 15, top 10 just wide receivers in football.
Yeah, talking about Kyle Pitts on the Falcons, I mean, looking at his stats now, he's actually leading the team in receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
He's only got the 1 touchdown to his name thus far, where he got touchdown to not this weekend, but the previous weekend.
2 weeks ago.
Or 2 weeks
ago. They were on a bye last week, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So
in London. Hasn't scored a touchdown.
What's that?
In the United States. Hasn't scored a touchdown in the United States.
So he hasn't scored in the country yet. That's right.
No.
But leading the team in receiving now, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people thought, Calvin Ridley was easily going to be that 1,000-yard guy for Atlanta, and maybe Kyle Pitts could compete for that spot. But now it's turning to be the Kyle Pitts show. I mean, he's played one more game than Ridley, don't get me wrong, but he's progressing pretty much like we all expected him to. We didn't expect him to be Travis Kelce out the gate, but going at the rate that he's going now, I mean, his sophomore year is going to go off with a bang, right? So I definitely agree in the Kyle Pitts standpoint. And of course, Jamar Chase, I mean, being in that category of premier rookie receivers like Justin Jefferson was last year, it's something to watch, especially that it's coming from his former quarterback in LSU. I think that's just the best story going along with him, is that everyone kind of downplayed him in the preseason, saying he can't really secure balls. He's dropping all these easy passes. How is he going to be the 6th overall pick if he's not making these catches? No one's really bringing up those memories now, right? It's not going to do you much good.
No, he's catching everything.
What? He had a 200-yard game, didn't he? I mean,
201, yeah, 8 for 201, had an 82-yard touchdown.
So no one's going to be really talking down on the guy anymore. No. That's for sure. I'll get into.
Well, I just want to say one more thing.
Okay.
Let's just remember, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were on the same team with Joe Burrow in college, probably the best offense ever. And, I mean, we knew it was good then. Jamar Chase had 20 receiving touchdowns. Justin Jefferson had 5 touchdowns in the semifinal. But, I mean, we could look back and say 2 of the best, rookie receivers in the history of the NFL played on the same team in college. That's just crazy. I mean, because Jamar Chase was better, and then Justin Jefferson comes out, and it's like, holy crap, look at him. People forget about Jamar Chase because he didn't play last year, opting out due to COVID. Now he's going, yeah, remember me? I was better than Justin Jefferson when I was younger than him. So, I mean, it's crazy that, to look back and see that offense.
So I'll get into another one of my takeaways here. We'll actually talk about the Sunday night game a little bit here between San Fran and Indianapolis. I know that you want to talk about Indianapolis maybe a little bit here, but I want to talk at least a little bit about San Fran because, I mean, towards the end of this game, I mean, Jimmy G just was absolutely falling apart. Were all of the interceptions his faults? I guess that's debatable. He is the one that threw the ball into traffic at the end of the day. So, I mean, he is the one throwing the ball to these receivers where it gets bobbled into an interception. I mean, the last interception he had, he lost the grip of the ball, but he's fumbling it on sacks and things. I mean, he had so many turnovers in this game last night. And considering how, electrifying and new that Trey Lance is as a quarterback for this team, I mean, come off season, obviously the Niners are not, in the playoff contention category right now. But come the offseason, Jimmy G's going to be out of a job, I think. He's out of San Fran. He got paid all that money from him. And to be honest with you, even with some of the bottom-feeding teams in the league, they still have a quarterback that they put their chips in with the draft. So I don't think Jimmy G ends up on a starting job with a different team this next season. But I'm just saying his time is no longer going to be with San Fran just after a real abysmal performance against a team that I didn't think was going to be all that difficult to compete against. But you might want to talk about the Colts a little bit, obviously shocking some people as of late.
Well, I mean, we've hit on 2 games so far, but let me just say I correctly tabbed the Bengals and the Colts when I believe I got like 2 games wrong all of last week. Or I mean, we both picked the Browns, and then I was trying to play smart with the Eagles, but I had a real good game, real good week picking those games. I
had a good weekend with the wagers. I saw that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. So I mean, the Bears. Well, I mean, we're talking the wagers. You had the Buccaneers winning by more than the Rams. The Bears either go out and play like complete garbage, or they play it really tight, and they played like complete garbage. To go along with that, Justin Fields almost got to 200 yards. I know we had a wager on that as well. He got to 184. So you took both of those, and then I had Derrick Henry having more fantasy points than Mahomes. So not a lot of close ones there. And then the picks. I'm sure I beat you on that because I had a great week. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll need to see more of Jimmy G. This is gonna be a hard game to judge him off of because I mean, just the grip on the ball. They're playing in a freaking downpour, a atmospheric river, as it was called. So we'll see. I mean, they showed the numbers during the broadcast. They play really well with Jimmy G for some reason, and obviously Trey Lance is the answer. And when he gets ready and experience, the offense will have that extra wrinkle of being able to run with him. But he'll, probably finish out the season. We'll see what he can do, and who knows? Somebody will take a chance on him. Maybe it's to mentor another rookie quarterback for a year or something. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, Jimmy G, we all saw the writing on the wall. He was done after this year for sure. The only way he could possibly save that was be to have a successful season, and it's just not happening for him. The injuries are happening again. But I do want to talk about the other side and the Colts, and my takeaway being that the AFC South is better than we think. I mean, I think we kind of wrote it off as, the Titans will win because they're, the best team, but they're not going to be that good, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Titans beat the Bills, and now they just beat the crap out of the Chiefs, which is looking, the Chiefs' wins are looking a little less impressive week by week, but still, to hold them to 1 field goal. We lauded the Buccaneers for holding the Chiefs to 9 points last year, and the Titans held them to 3, and they were able to, beat them without a huge Derrick Henry game. So, I think if you look at what the Titans' wins are, they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bills, they beat the Seahawks, which, it was at the start of the year before the Seahawks had all the issues they had, although a lot of the issues were still there. And then they got a win over the Colts. And the Colts, I mean, they just beat the Niners, who, isn't a great win, but they're stringing them together. They went from winless to now 3 in a row. And I think, they can make some noise and challenge the Titans. Carson Wentz is playing pretty good football, hasn't thrown an interception now, and he's 8 touchdowns and 0 picks in the last 4 games. And Jonathan Taylor is going into one of the best running backs in the league, while the defense is, making a lot of plays. Kwity Paye is, a great first-round pick for them. He's doing really good. They've got, Xavier Rhodes and obviously Darius Leonard as one of the best just defensive players, and throw in DeForest Buckner in with him. I mean, let's see where they are. Points allowed, they've given up. They had those interesting games at the start. I can't find them on it. I can never find anybody. They're about middle of the pack on points, but they're playing a lot better than I think people thought, and I could see them challenging the Titans, or even challenging for a wild card spot, given the fact that there's a lot up for grabs.
Considering that the Colts obviously are playing Tennessee this next week, a lot of people are going to be looking at seeing if the Colts can make a sweep in for the number 1 spot.
That's crazy. They're going to have both of their matchups out of the way. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, so I mean, the Colts kind of remind me a lot of the Vikings in a way. I feel like they're the AFC version of the Vikings, meaning, they have a lot of players that can really play. Like, they have a lot of talent going around. But the quarterback position, we can all agree that there's a ceiling there, right? It's not that we're saying that these quarterbacks are bad by any means, but where you're going to get with these quarterbacks. I mean, there were definitely some people in the offseason that thought, and I was one of those people, especially early on, that thought the Colts may be a dark horse to be a divisional champion and maybe an AFC title appearance. This was early in the offseason, right? We're thinking about maybe a wild card spot at this point, but, Carson Wentz, don't get me wrong, he's not as glamorous as he was in his MVP days, but he has a ceiling for sure, but he can definitely bring this team to like a 9-10 win category for sure. And the fact you throw in their rushing attack, as well as them finally seeming to figure out Michael Pittman Jr.'s role, which was a beautiful catch towards the end of the game to get in the end zone. That with their defense, with a couple of players there, I mean, the Colts aren't bad necessarily. They just got off to a really rocky start, and I definitely was one of those people early in the season that said, like, this doesn't seem like a team that has it figured out. This doesn't seem like a team that has the answer. They just look like they're going out there and they're running. It doesn't look like they have a game plan in mind. But now, 3-1 in the last 4 games. With you don't really want to call it a choke job against Baltimore, because I think Lamar Jackson's just Lamar Jackson, right? So if they hold on to that lead and they were going up against a subpar quarterback in Baltimore, they'd be 4-0 in the past 4 weeks. So,
well, I mean, like we said when we talked about that game, I mean, if the giant that is Calais Campbell doesn't block that field goal, they go up 2 scores on that one and they win. So yeah, I mean, this is not the team that started the season with those bad losses. This is a team that is putting together something, and they're playing a little bit better. And I think the fact that the AFC South, I mean, you've got 2 teams that are just not really going to be relevant for any reason. So it really opens it up. And I think that's what can pad their, stats for a wild card berth, because you've got the AFC West and AFC North are going to, beat each other up, so they can't all have a bunch of wins. And, I mean, Carson Wentz, I mean, he's, which Wentz are we going to get? We don't know, but is he, that much worse or, similar enough to Ryan Tannehill or a Baker Mayfield or, some of the guys on some teams that we, Derek Carr that we view as playoff contenders. So, I think that he's not as overmatched as we might think. Obviously, we can see him turn back into the guy who throws a billion interceptions, but, maybe Frank Reich is, the Wentz whisperer. So we'll see how that plays out.
I'd keep an eye on Indianapolis for the near future to see if maybe they make some big move at quarterback, whether it be in the free agency period or maybe in the future coming drafts. Because obviously, Carson Wentz, I don't think is a long-term option for them, but perhaps he could be playing well enough, and then you get the ultimate franchise guy to come in, your next Andrew Luck, so to speak, and come in and finally lead that team to greatness. But they're just in a very interesting kind of transfer period where they're playing good football. But there's definitely a ceiling there. I want to get into a little bit of a kind of like sleeper takeaway, if you will, before I talk about obviously the better team at hand here. But we'll talk about the Patriots a little bit because obviously, I mean, they gave it to the Jets, right? I mean, obviously the Jets had to go without Zach Wilson for the rest of that game. But even if Zach Wilson was there, I've stuck with this take on the Jets for a while. If you put Patty Holmes on this Jets team, it doesn't matter. They're still not a playoff team. You know what I mean? Like,
no, God, no.
They just don't have any real weapons to deal with on this team. But going up against the Patriots yesterday, I mean, we knew Belichick, like, he knows how to play against AFC East teams. He's been doing it for 2 decades, and he's been doing it really well. But you look at a Patriots team, and you think, not necessarily a playoff team. They're getting there. They're trying to rebuild in the post-Brady era. And you look at the Jets team, you're like, okay, well, this is, they got Zach Wilson trying to make it work and making what's the coach's name? I'm totally blanking. For the Jets. Totally blanking. Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh just looking like a terrible coach, but just this terrible team. You can't really put a lot of blame on him. But 54-13 for the New England Patriots to take out the Jets like that. I mean, so my takeaway for the Patriots is, when the Patriots match personnel, meaning if they're playing a team that has, across the board, every player is among the same, talent level, everything evens out when it comes to rosters, or, New England has a better roster than their opponents, Belichick will nearly always win. Because when it comes down to, a match at personnel, right, it's going to come down to the coaching and who are you going to want to put your chips towards when it comes to, a head coach doing his job. This wasn't even like a Mac Jones like bonanza, really. I mean, he threw 300 yards, sure, and threw only 2 touchdowns. They had 4 total rushing touchdowns and just absolutely barraged the Jets on defense. I mean, this is just an example of a well-coached game to have a huge blowout victory. I mean, if you gave like a 54-point game for the Chiefs, then Patrick Mahomes has 450 yards and like 5 touchdowns or something like that. But you have a team like the Patriots getting 54 points. This is just, coaching is really the story behind that score.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be a win. I mean, Bill Belichick beats up on the Jets. Jets haven't won since 2015. It's going to be a while. And, especially with the injuries mounting up for the Jets, like we knew they were a bad team. I'm surprised they even got that one win. We'll see how much more, but yeah, I mean, it's it's good to see that, but yeah, I mean, Bill Belichick, he's kind of, I think, taken out some frustrations because they've played close against the Texans and had some not great games. So I still think there's a long way to go, and beating up on the Jets isn't really going to change my opinion of any team. And it's certainly good because if you struggle with them, that's a big issue. But I think Mac Jones is Mac Jones is going to be good. Mac Jones is the best rookie quarterback this year, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, there's still a lot to go for them. I want to hit on Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp, the unstoppable connection. I mean, I feel like we kind of have these weeks where we forget, and then Matt Stafford goes, oh yeah, let me just throw it to Cooper Kupp every time, and then you'll remember how good he is. I feel like that happens every other week. I mean, his worst game is 5 receptions for 64 yards, or 54 yards. And I mean, that's not that bad. He's only got 2 games without a touchdown.
I mean, if if you had that performance, what you said, 50 yards receiving is his worst performances here. If you had that performance every single year or every single game in a season, you'd have an 800 plus yard receiving year.
Yeah.
So,
And he already has
a great season. Yeah.
He already has 809 yards and 9 touchdowns. Just to put that into perspective, if you took that stat line through 7 games and put it to the entirety of the 2020 season, he would be 39th in yards and tied for 10th in touchdowns. And he has 10 more games left. I mean, I don't know what is going to happen. At some point, you think you have to start guarding him, but the Rams can just scheme things up, and so I don't know what is going to happen. But Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are just on a different level, and Matthew Stafford, that's 2 really, really good games in a row. The Rams are keeping themselves in that conversation. They have 1 loss to the Cardinals, which are, haven't lost to anybody yet. So the Rams, I think, are still, one of those teams that are way, way up there, as we'll talk about in a bit. But I mean, just that connection is, I've talked about, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams before on this. We know about Mahomes to Hill and Kelsey and some of these other guys, but I mean Stafford and Kupp. I mean, after Rodgers and Adams, I think that's got to be the number one connection there. And I mean they've played 7 games together. The fact that they're doing this in their first 7 games also is just insane.
When's the last time that either a new quarterback or a new receiver have joined a franchise and the connection between the two has been this good? Because you
can talk about Allen and Stephon Diggs last year, but that's a new receiver, not a new quarterback. But
so it's a little bit of the opposite. Yeah.
You don't see quarterbacks come in and just have that insane connection, and to the point where it's like he throws it to other people, but he throws it to Kupp on a way different level.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just in terms of a first thought in a similar setting, I'm thinking about Peyton Manning in 2013 going to the Broncos. Yeah. I mean, he had 4 or 5 targets to deal with, anyways. And there was multiple people that got 1,000 yards on that team, I think. So I mean, Demaryius Thomas was the number 1 option on that.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas, but yeah, and I think the thing with Kupp is people are Cooper Kupp's good, but I mean, I know for the past few years, a lot of people have been viewing Robert Woods as kind of the go-to guy. He's the number 1 receiver. Kupp, they like to use him in the red zone and all this, but I mean, we talked about it in the offseason. He had plus 9,000 odds to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns this year. A lot of people weren't really believing in him, and I mean, 2 years ago he was almost leading the league in touchdowns. So I think that's the thing is we've seen these receivers that have been really good. Stephon Diggs was really good and do that, but we haven't necessarily seen the dude get elevated to this insane level. And I mean with the Peyton Manning stuff, he came in and that offense was just incredible that year. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty just insane what we're seeing, and it's straight too. It wasn't necessarily a free agent thing. I mean, obviously it was pretty close to it. They kind of had picked it out, but I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do the rest of the year. I think Stafford is definitely going to be in that conversation for MVP, for all these things, as long as the Rams stay playing at this level.
Last year, you'd look at this Rams team and you're they're probably a top 10, top 12 team in the league when it was all said and done. And that was with, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, their respective best players in their positions, right? But now you have Matt Stafford working with Cooper Kupp this way. It's just this 3-headed dragon that you just really can't get past when it comes down to the end of the year. And now they're not necessarily a top 10 team, really. They're a top 5, right? And we'll get to that a little bit later. But, I want to talk about one of the other top teams in the league. Obviously, Arizona is just pretty unstoppable right now. I mean, they are just a hot team going forward. But what interested me most about this game that they just played is, I mean, obviously it's against the Texans, right? You look at any team playing the Texans and just say, all right, well, is it going to be 10 points, 20 points, 30 points? How much is the other team going to win by, right? No one's taking the Texans seriously by any means, but the Cardinals are down 2-0 at the end of the first quarter. You almost thought you were looking at like a soccer box score. You're just like, oh, it's 2-0 at the end of the half. No, they had a safety, and that was the only score. On top of that, you have an injury scare with Kyler Murray, which will have every single Arizona fan just wincing with jaws dropped, like, oh my God, please no. 2-0 start to this game, and actually it ends up being 5-0 for the Texans. This undefeated team losing 5-0 to the Texans. Obviously, the Cardinals were not out of this game, but then they just scored 31 straight points, and this game just just a piece of cake for Arizona. And like I said, it's not like anybody was counting Arizona out of this game, by any means. I mean, the injury scare was definitely a little concerning, but this just shows that even Arizona can battle against adversity to get some of these wins. I mean, playing against the Rams, nobody thought they were going to take them out, and that just shows that they can beat teams when they're underestimated. And then you have, oh, well, they're 5-0. There's no way they can get 6-0. Just more underestimation going their way, and they just go out and they keep winning, and they keep winning, and they are now they're the number one ranked team in terms of record. They're the only undefeated team left, and I'm just interested to see how many more mountains that this team can surpass in terms of just obstacles in their way. Is it are they going to go through a concerning injury to stop their progress? Are they going to face a team that's better than them personnel wise, like the Rams? Are they going to have another situation like that? The Cardinals can go out there and they will play great football in most scenarios, and that's why they're 7-0. But I'll get to them a little bit more a little bit later. But it just shows that Arizona can just absolutely start from 0% to 100 and just get wins.
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly got a big test coming up as they play Green Bay next week, which we'll talk about later this week. And, I mean, I think the biggest adversity they faced was, I mean, last week they didn't have their head coach. They didn't have their, quarterback coach. Vance Joseph had to step in, and I think, that was kind of – I know we didn't necessarily hit on that, but, I mean, and Cliff Kingsbury didn't know if he was going to, get cleared for this game. So they're facing, adversity – even off the field with stuff like that, and injuries will certainly hit at some point. They also didn't have Rodney Hudson last week. They're starting center. So you're obviously going to have to deal with adversity, but they've done it pretty well. And I mean, I don't care who you're, playing. They've got some good ones there, but just to go, 7-0 is really impressive. I want to talk about a team that is the opposite, and that is incredibly unimpressive. And it might be a team that hurts you to hear, but the Panthers are – I said they were done last week. Now they're really, really done. I mean, they didn't – you locked this game against the Giants, who are bad, and it wasn't just a loss. It was a terrible loss to the point where Sam Darnold got benched. So, I mean, I think that might settle a little debate there if Sam Darnold is really not the answer there, and I don't think he's really doing too hot considering he got benched. But, I mean, I don't even need to bring up stats or anything, but to get your ass kicked by the Giants, who are just a dismal team, 25-3, I think is the final score. Obviously, they haven't had Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey being out is not the reason you lose this game to the Giants. You don't lose this game to the Giants because Sam Darnold is just not a good quarterback, and they would be better off if they just kept Teddy Bridgewater and didn't give up a second, fourth, and whatever round pick to get Sam Darnold, who is just not the answer. So the Panthers will be in a good position to draft a rookie quarterback this year, maybe trade for a disgruntled veteran. We'll see. But Sam Darnold, your days as a starting quarterback are limited. You weren't good at USC. You weren't that good you weren't that good at USC. You weren't good in New York. You're not good in Carolina. It sucks to see, but the Panthers are officially done.
there's not much that I can really defend them with going forward. You know what I mean? Like starting off 3-0, I thought this was going to be one of those dark horse teams, but you know, they're more of a dark hole team because they are just in a black hole of just loss after loss, embarrassment after embarrassment. You know, Sam Darnold, I thought was going to be in a scenario that would work a lot better for him. You know, have a little bit better of a surrounding cast, a little bit better of a coach to deal with. Right now, I'm more Adam Gase, but you know, we're starting to get into the territory that maybe Adam Gase, you know, didn't really affect Sam Darnold. You could have Belichick coach this quarterback, and you don't know if he's going to come out there and play stellar football at this point. You know, it just doesn't work for every single quarterback. Like you said, they don't have CMC to work with, but you know, if you're running CMC 30 times a game and you throw him, you know, 10 receptions and just all the fantasy owners are just absolutely ecstatic, you're probably still going to lose by double digits to the best teams in this league. Like this team, you know, I was definitely high on them in the offseason. I thought this could be like an 8-9, 9-8 team. Now I'm kind of in like the 5-win territory. And saying that, I mean, I look at the rest of their schedule. They don't play any like guaranteed wins for the rest of the year. They do play Washington at some point, or sorry, not Miami. They do play Washington, but Miami is probably the closest like gimme game they have.
I mean, if you get destroyed like that against the Giants, you can lose to literally anybody. I mean, when you make my pick of the Giants look good, which I have been on the wrong side of picking the Giants to win football games quite a few times. I mean, that's just bad. And yeah, McCaffrey's out, but McCaffrey's not swinging 22 points in that game. That's just a bad effort. And I just want to bring up a little fun moment when you had Sam Darnold as number 5 in your MVP ballot a few weeks ago.
In week 3, yes, I did.
Yep. Just
when they were 3-0 and he didn't have any turnovers. Maybe
a bit of an overreaction. Do you have one more takeaway, or are you ready to move on?
I guess just a quick one here. And I know I talked about the AFC North being, not determined. AFC West still is just undetermined. I mean, like, obviously you look at the standings and you think like, oh, this is between the Raiders and the Chargers. Like, we'll see how this goes. Like, if you just looked at wins and losses and you didn't look at rosters and that was that. But I mean, you really can't count out Kansas City just ever, right?
You can't. They're certainly not making it to where you feel confident in them, but you still can't count them out.
Mm-hmm. You can't count out a team that, has just numerous like comeback efforts in playoff games and crazy season games. A quarterback getting paid $500 million, right? Mm-hmm. This division is still, undetermined. The Broncos probably are, out of this race. But between these 3 teams, Chargers, Raiders, and Kansas City, like it is still up for grabs. 2 weeks ago, we would have said, oh, the Chargers are going to go. They're going to get, 12, 13 wins. They're going to win the division. This is going to be great. Like 4 weeks ago, we'd say like, oh, the Raiders are shocking everybody. They're going to win this. And now, the Raiders are leading the division right now after a great performance from Derek Carr. But Kansas City could be a 10-7 team and they could still make the Super Bowl.
For sure.
It's simple as that.
Got a lot of things to figure out. And I mean, like we said a few weeks ago, I mean, the Broncos, what's stopping them from, getting 9 wins, making a wild card? Who knows? You get those 3 wins. But although I view that as pretty unlikely, but certainly everybody in there, like any of them could make the playoffs and I wouldn't, be shocked. I'd be like, oh, okay, the Broncos made it. It's a little surprising. Same with the AFC North. Like if you told me the Steelers ended up sneaking into the wild card game, I'd be like, oh, that's like, wasn't expecting that, but I can see it. Same obviously now with the Bengals. So it's, one of those things where you go, I don't think the Broncos play into, the picture at the end of the year. I don't think the Steelers do, but I wouldn't be completely like, just like blown out of my mind to see them, finishing a game out or whatever. So it'll certainly be something to watch. And, we are going to now talk about the top 5 teams in the NFL. And, for the first time, and I don't know how long, the Chiefs will not be in one of these lists. They've pretty much been, written in pen on one of these top 5 spots for a few years now. But, I mean, we've got fairly similar lists, just one differentiation. But and I think looking at this, like I had to switch at the end, but I can't put an AFC team in my top 5 right now. I just I wanted to put the Bills up there, and then I realized, that loss to Kansas City isn't that impressive anymore. So I kind of knocked them down. I still think I would put the Ravens as number 1 of those AFC teams. But, I've got 5 NFC teams, as my 5 best, which, by record is actually, how it is, but certainly not the way everybody sees it.
We have pretty similar lists. You have, let's see, one team in here that I don't have, and I have one team that you don't have in here. You think the Cardinals are the best team in the league. I kind of want to, obviously they're 7-0, but I kind of want to hear the justification for that.
The thing with them is I'm just going to keep them there until they lose, because I don't think they're the Super Bowl favorite. Obviously they aren't the team that I would pick to win the whole thing. But until they lose, obviously this week will be a huge test. But if we're putting, you've got the Buccaneers up there. The Buccaneers have lost to the Rams. The Buccaneers barely beat the Packers. I think the Buccaneers have, clear and obvious holes to their team, and the Cardinals, until they lose a game, I can't say anybody is playing better than them right now. It's, the wheels might fall off at some point, but this is the best teams right now sort of power ranking thing, not who I think in 3 months from now will still be there. But we've seen teams kind of make this leap. We've seen teams kind of go from decent, all right, and we kind of don't think it's happening, and then it is, and then they are a legitimate contender. And I think the Cardinals can still be this team. So I'm not gonna rule them out until I see them not only lose, but have issues. Like I said with the Bucks, when they've lost, because you can kind of see that secondary is a problem, and we've seen it in losses, we've seen it in wins. But I can't necessarily point to what the Cardinals' huge issue is right now. I think it'll probably end up being some sort of injuries.
Obviously, injuries could be something that they run into down the road, considering they've had injury scares with both DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, as well as injury-prone J.J. Watt, who's joined the team now. I'm not disregarding Arizona's stellar football that they've been playing. They are definitely a top 5 team. I have them at number 2. This is, if the Chiefs or the Buccaneers or the Packers or even the Ravens were undefeated right now, almost everybody would have them at number 1 if they were the only undefeated team in the league.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of a implicit bias, if you will, towards the Cardinals being undefeated, and you look at that team and you're like, oh, they're undefeated, but they're not the best team in the league. And that will piss off a lot of Arizona fans, I'm sure. But it's to the point where, they don't have, really any playoff experience in recent memory. So am I really going to count on this team to win
the Buccaneers
the divisional round?
The Buccaneers as a team didn't have any playoff experience last year.
But Tom Brady did.
Yeah, J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins. They had Rodney Hunt. They have guys with playoff experience on that team.
Very small playoff experience. Tom Brady and Gronkowski won numerous rings together, and Levante David was not a part of that Buccaneers Super Bowl team. I'm thinking of Derek Brooks, but
Levante David never played. None of those guys. Very few of those guys had ever even been in the playoffs. Sure, that comes into play at some point, but sometimes what's on the field is what's on the field. Their defense has given up the 3rd fewest points. They're up there, and they have good wins. They beat the Rams pretty handily. They beat the Titans, and who are now a pretty solid team and probably a top 10 team. I mean, they're not beating up on nobodies. They're putting together pretty good wins, and I think until they lose, which we'll see coming up, but you got to get them some credit where credit's due, because I think the Buccaneers they've got issues that I think they need to address before I can say they're the best team.
They have issues that need to be addressed, don't get me wrong, but the Buccaneers offense as a whole, it's not even the Stafford Cup connection. It's not even Kyler Murray hitting up DeAndre Hopkins, or even Josh Allen hitting up Stephon Diggs. I mean, Brady has 3 receivers that could easily get 1,000 yards just in any season with any quarterback. And he can just pick and choose who he wants to throw to just based on any given night. Yeah. Mike Evans had 3 total touchdowns yesterday and didn't cross 100 yards. Chris Godwin was the one who led the team in yardage. Antonio Brown, who didn't play this past game, after week 1, I think he had multiple touchdowns in week 1, right?
Yeah, he's had 2 games where he was kind of the best receiver of the day. They certainly have those weapons to spread it around to, for sure.
And Gronk is not, the best tight end in the league anymore, but you still have Brady's all-time red zone target to work with. He has 4 people to get the ball to, and I don't think there's a single team in this league that can say that they can do that. There's not a single team in this league that has the exact same passing attack that this Buccaneers team does. You may be able to say, the Chiefs have a really good passing attack too. Well, not as of late, and they have a tight end and a receiver to work with.
I mean, I put
double the targets Buccaneers have.
I put the Cowboys and the Cardinals,
Sure.
with their weapons up there.
The Cowboys are a better passing offense than the Chiefs right now, and they have, I think Dak Prescott has a little bit of playoff experience, but Amari Cooper doesn't have a whole lot. Then you got what's his face? CeeDee Lamb, second-year player, is still learning every game. They're more of kind of a balanced pass run team. Obviously, the Cowboys I would consider like a top 5 offense in this league, but I'm just looking at Brady do what Brady does, and once you get this is the same thing in like the NBA, right? You can look at a LeBron James team and say, are they the best team in the league? Like I'm talking about like back in like his later Cavaliers years, where he'd be playing good enough basketball to make the playoffs, but then the playoffs happen, and then LeBron James is going to make it to the NBA Finals. When the playoffs happen, Tom Brady, as a wild card with a team in his first year last year, goes to the Super Bowl and embarrasses the Super Bowl champs. So Tom Brady playoff mode is not to be messed with. So,
but I think
that being said, I cannot put another team over this team until I see, someone do something extra, spectacular over the Buccaneers.
Like beat them, like the Rams did. Beat them by like 10.
And the Cardinals,
game that wasn't close.
The Cardinals beat the Rams too. So
and I think if the Cardinals played the Buccaneers right like this week, I think
the Titans
they would win.
Lost to the Jets, but the Titans are like a top 10 team in the league. So I mean, we can all agree that it doesn't come down the record at the end of the day, because that's why I don't have Arizona at number 1, and that's why you have Arizona at number 1, but you don't like for sure like, oh, they're the best team in the league. You have them at number 1 because they haven't lost.
Well, they're playing the best right now, which is why they haven't lost.
Are they playing the best, or have they not lost? It's a stupid question, but it kind of makes sense in their.
I think they're playing the best. I mean, because their one close game was that. I mean, that one against the Niners, and I think that was. I mean, when they had all their issues, but I mean, playing the Rams well, and I mean, they're playing pretty good. I want to ask you about a team that you don't have on there, because you don't have the Packers on there, and I think that's because you're being stubborn and you're still trying to hold on to what they were a few weeks ago.
No, I'm not being stubborn with the Packers. They're a great football team, and they're obviously top 10. They're probably at that 6 or 7 spot for me, but I mean, you can't count. So I'm going to play the playoff card again here. I still can't count on this team to do anything in the playoffs, but
I mean,
I'll disregard the playoffs for a little bit here. Their offense is strictly Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams go. Aaron Jones is out there and he's making some plays, sure, but this is the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams show. And the Packers, they damn near lost to the Bengals a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but the Bengals are
pretty borderline top 10 team. So
am I going
to say that the Packers are not a top team because they lost one game to the Bengals and they missed however many field goal they won one game against the Bengals that they missed all those field goals, they almost lost. Am I really going to say that they're a top 10 team when they had a close win over them? I mean, I will say there are a ton of teams that qualify for this top spot, but there's also a ton of teams that qualify for this top 5.
Buccaneers have a close win against a Patriots team that is worse than the Bengals, so I think that is not really helping your argument out there. But my thing with the Packers is they have rattled off 5 straight wins. They obviously looked bad in that week 1. Or is it 6 straight wins now? They 6-1? Yeah. I mean, 6 straight wins after, a bad week 1. And so, I've gone over why I think they are, a lot better. But I mean, I think, I've talked about how I think they don't have postseason success is a bit of a lie because they have now been one of the Final Four teams 2 years in a row. That's pretty damn good. And, I mean,
no one cares about Final Fours, Cody. If that was the case, then there'd be so many college basketball teams that would just be praised over the years because they made the Final Four. Right?
I mean, that's as far as the Bills got last year, and the Bills.
Sure, it's the first time in 2 decades that they've made it there. The Packers have made it there the past 3 years, and they can't get to the Super Bowl, and they can't win in the conference championship. In fact, they get embarrassed in the conference championship.
They didn't get embarrassed last year. I just think sometimes you like to choose. Sometimes you like to use playoff experience. Sometimes you don't care about it. The Packers have won games in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers has won games in the playoffs, and they're playing just as good of a football as anybody else out there. I mean.
But what are they doing better than? What are they doing better than most teams? Than the top 5 teams that I have up there. What are they doing better?
I mean, they're not losing as much as the.
Yes, they have a better record, and so do the Cardinals have a better record than every other team. But other than record, what in terms of their offense? I mean, is Aaron Rodgers an MVP candidate right now? No. No one's talking about Aaron Rodgers winning MVP right now.
Nobody's talking about Aaron Rodgers winning MVP at this time of the year last year. It's a long season, but I mean, they. In terms of winning games at the end of, winning games at the end, I mean, they can do that up there with almost anybody. They've done it a few times. They actually have a top 10 pass defense with a lot of good players on that defense. And, I mean, I think, like I said before, I think they are the version of the Chiefs that the Chiefs wish they were right now. They're the offense that can kind of just move the ball, do what they need to, and then they've got a defense that can make plays and do what it has to do. And, I mean, we'll see this week, obviously, Arizona and Green Bay both getting a really big test, but, we'll talk about that later in the week. But I mean, you don't win 6 straight games because you're not, good. You do that because you're doing something right. And that's, what I'm putting my faith in these, my top couple of teams.
3 of those wins have made the playoffs in the past 2 years. 2 of those wins, those teams made the playoffs last year. 3 of those wins have made the playoffs last year: Chicago, Washington, and Pittsburgh. But the rest of them, Detroit and Chicago, I mean, he's going to make the Packers will make the playoffs.
Yeah.
You get to play the Bears and the Lions and the Vikings twice a year. You'll be 5-1 or 6-0. Those are your guaranteed wins, and they are good enough to beat some other great teams. But this team is just not dynamic enough for me to put them in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, we both got Cowboys in there. We both got Rams in there. I mean, I can let you give me your Bills pitch here before we move on, and we'll see what you think about them.
The Bills are a sneak away from being a 1-loss football team. I mean,
I think first off, them not even kicking the field goal there was dumb, but also they don't have a good win.
Sure.
I mean, the Chiefs are their best win. You want to talk about the Packers not having good wins. The Bills have beat the Dolphins, the Jets, Washington. Like, they don't have anything nearly as good as the Packers do.
The Bills are a QB sneak away from being a one-loss team, and when you have a player like Josh Allen, I mean, obviously I'd kick the field goal if I was the one calling the shots, but you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you might as well just roll the dice. I mean, don't you have to roll the dice to take out Kansas City a couple of weeks ago? Isn't that what the Ravens did? Isn't that what
Yeah. I mean, I would have rolled the dice differently. I would have had Josh Allen run on a little play action, give him the option to throw or to pass. I think, a QB sneak, it doesn't, that's not really skill-based.
Yeah, the play call is a different discussion, but you have to be risky to be one of those premier teams. That is how Kansas City is one of those premier teams, not as of right now, but how they have been with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this is just a team, and if people want to say that the Chiefs game wasn't an impressive win, like at the time, this Chiefs team, everyone was like, oh, well, they're still the Chiefs. They're going to win. They're going to win. I mean, now you look at the Chiefs and you're like, oh, well, they're still going to win. They're having, rough patch, obviously going through an injury scare with Patrick Mahomes, but they're still going to win. Now people are trying to downplay this win over the Chiefs, and it doesn't make any sense to me because, yes, they beat a team that has not been themselves, and they are QB sneak away from taking out Tennessee.
I mean, that's not even necessarily true because they still were going to have to score as 20-something seconds. I mean, not a guarantee there. So it wasn't like they got stopped on the goal line.
There's no way Tennessee would have been able – if the Bills got a touchdown there and they were up 38-34, the Titans are not winning that game. There's not going to be another Tennessee miracle.
But what I'm saying is it's not like they got stopped on the goal line. They still were going to have to score. It wasn't a guarantee. Like they might have even still ended up having to settle for a field goal. So it's not as black and white as it looks.
The Bills and the Cowboys have a similar situation to me, to where these are fantastic football teams and they're being downplayed by, what's the better story? Are we going to talk about the Cowboys, who we know have the personnel, who we know have, good coaching as of late and play in a favorable division? No. We're going to talk about the Cardinals, who are undefeated and they're playing in the hardest division in football. And the Bills, are we going to talk about them playing, great football, great coaching, favorable division?
Great coaching. They've messed up the game by not kicking a field goal. I think
it was one call. So we're gonna blame one call on bad. So that's bad coaching now. It's just the one. Call.
That was a very example of bad coaching.
So one call. Okay, we'll do one call as bad coaching. I mean,
we'll see. I want to see them get tested. They've lost to the best team.
They were tested. They played on the road in Arrowhead Stadium to play the Chiefs. Who has beaten the Chiefs in Arrowhead like that?
Tennessee beat them by more. And then also beat the Bills. So
they beat the Bills on one play. This is so where are the Bills on your list then?
I haven't gone into top 10, but I think after my 5, I'd probably have the Ravens. I think the Ravens, I think for me would be 6. And then, head to head, I'm probably putting, Tennessee and Buffalo are close. Los Angeles, then
Well, they can't be that close if you're saying that Tennessee beat them and they beat Kansas City by more. So Tennessee's the better football team to you, and so is the Ravens. So they're now at 8.
Yeah, I'm probably around that. Tennessee's playing hotter right now. Buffalo just hasn't had a lot of convincing me yet, and I think some of those struggles can still pop up. Josh Allen has 13 more passing yards than Aaron Rodgers, and same touchdown to interception ratio. So if you're not impressed by Rodgers, you shouldn't be impressed by Allen either, with a worse completion percentage.
Looking at those first layer numbers, yes, they're very similar. But when Aaron Rodgers is giving the ball to Devontae Adams for the overwhelmingly most part, Josh Allen is working with Dawson Knox, who has not been a premier tight end in this league ever, and now he's playing like a top 10 tight end. He's not giving the ball to Stephon Diggs all the time. He's not even working through Cole Beasley a lot, but he's got some touchdowns through him, and he's got Emmanuel Sanders looking like, having a great, surge late in his career. The same thing with Kyler Murray. He's not just giving it to DeAndre Hopkins. He's giving it to Christian Kirk. He's now giving it to Zach Ertz. He's got two great running backs in the backfield to work with. Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams.
Yeah, you're right. He's working with less, so you're right. It's even more impressive. But we can move on to talk about some MVP stuff real quick because we're pretty close across the board here. We have the same 5 guys in a little bit of different order, so we can just go through this quickly. Obviously, Kyler Murray, he will stay at number 1 until they lose, and even after that, I mean, you're quarterbacking a team that's undefeated. It's going to get you up in those rankings, and he's also having an incredible year, playing really well. Let me see what because like I've said, I mean, the biggest kind of thing for him is that completion percentage. I think 73%. He's playing really well. I mean, I've got Tom Brady second. I know you've still got Lamar holding up there. So what's your thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson, obviously, not a great performance yesterday against the Bengals, but Lamar Jackson, this is very similar to some Russell Wilson years in the past where he's doing everything for this team offensively.
Yeah.
He's one of the top 10 rushers and passers in this league, and none of the other candidates can say the same. I don't think Kyler Murray is in the top 10 in rushing. I don't believe.
No, not yards for sure. He doesn't do as much.
Lamar Jackson is just a dynamic player. I mean, if the Ravens are a 13-14 win team by the end of the year, which is, kind of pushing it, but if they're a 13-14 win team by the end of the year, you have to consider Lamar as being in the MVP. They don't have the greatest offense in the world, but they have Lamar Jackson taking the snap.
And I mean, even throw in, Dak Prescott, who obviously didn't play this week, so kind of bumped him down. But I mean, these top 6 guys, I feel like, I went from Lamar from 3 to 5 to whatever. Like, it's just, who knows where to place these guys. It's so close. But Tom Brady, I mean, he's leading the league in yards and touchdowns. And so I feel like as long as you're doing that, it's a pretty solid like MVP case, especially for, a team that's going to finish with an incredible record with that schedule. So, I mean, it's going to solidify obviously big games, narratives. I mean, it's probably going to go with how good these quarterbacks are. It's probably going to go to somebody that finishes with the 1 or the 2 seed in their division. And yeah, I mean, I agree. Lamar, if they get 13 wins, it's going to be hard not to give it back to him. Same with, Matthew Stafford, who, is second in yards no, he's not second in yards. He's third in yards, second in touchdowns. I mean, he's playing incredibly well. If the Rams, get that many wins up there, and, Derek Henry, I've been having to include him, for every week, but as long as he's on pace, let's see, as long as he's on pace, 869 divided by 7 times 17. Yeah, I mean, as long as he's on pace, like, to challenge that record or be around there, and the Titans are pretty good, he's got to be on the list.
I mean, he's got to be on pace to at least approach the rushing touchdown record, I imagine, or actually that rushing touchdown record, isn't it like 27 or something crazy?
Yeah, the rushing touchdown records are insane.
Yeah, I think that's held by like LT or something like that.
Like LaDainian Tomlinson, like Sean Alexander. Let's see.
I mean, it's like 25 plus, and so 28 season they've played 28 games. Like it's 28. Yeah, I mean, he'll probably surpass 20 at this rate. I don't know the last time that a running back's gotten over 20, but
to LaDainian Tomlinson, 28.
So if he surpasses 20 touchdowns, then he's most certainly in the top 5 MVP discussion. And
I
this
mean,
is
I
the
think
that I'm taking into account, Derrick Henry's year to be an MVP caliber season.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough because you could have an all-time, top 10 ever rushing season, top 5 maybe even, but you could also have these incredible quarterback seasons and obviously the quarterback position is weighted a little more heavily, so it's going to be interesting. I mean, Derrick Henry is virtually a lock for Offensive Player of the Year at this point. I mean, which is basically the non-quarterback MVP award. Unless they do something stupid and give the offensive player to the MVP.
It's either going to be him or Cooper Kupp at this rate.
Cooper Kupp. I mean, they could both have historic seasons. I mean, there's going to be some guys that are very deserving of hardware that do not get it because there's so much. I mean, especially with this extra 17 games, I mean, there's going to be counting records are going to be broken in these next few years because you've got that extra game, especially yardage stuff and maybe some sack stuff. Who knows? We'll see with that. But this will just be something that we keep looking at every week, kind of seeing who's in the conversation, who's staying there, who's popping up, who's falling off, like Sam Darnold did. But we can get into the Monday Night Football preview. We've got the Seattle Seahawks versus the New Orleans Saints. The game is in Seattle. New Orleans is a 4.5-point favorite as of right now. It's very similar to that spread of last week the Seahawks had against the Steelers, although that was in Pittsburgh. That was an overtime game that the Steelers were able to come away with. But what are you thinking on this game?
This would have been a great showcase of Russell Wilson if he did not go down with an injury. I mean, going against his Saints team, Russell Wilson would have had, I think, a good prime time Russell Wilson showing. You can always count on Russell Wilson in prime time. But we got to talk about Geno Smith. So you have Geno Smith and Jameis Winston facing against each other. I mean, when's the last time that's happened? If that's ever happened, but
probably not.
I think Geno Smith was drafted in the league around the same time that Winston was. So
a few years
maybe
before.
They played, maybe they didn't.
2 years before, but they were in AFC, NFC. So my guess is a no. But
so who would have thought that Jameis Winston will come to Seattle and have the advantage? When would anybody consider Jameis Winston to have the quarterback advantage going to? I was about to call it CenturyLink because it'll always be CenturyLink in my heart, but going to Lumen Field, it's kind of crazy to look at a game like this and see it see it weighed in New Orleans' favor so much.
But I mean, I don't disagree. Do you?
I don't disagree either.
Because I mean, I think New Orleans is a better team. They're a better team than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh won by 3. So, I think Saints. Like I said, I will not put any trust in Geno Smith. Maybe next week when they play the Jaguars, I might believe in him. But to me, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility for the Seahawks to win, but I think it's going to be tough.
Because at the end of the day, it is playing in Seattle. It has somewhat of an effect. It doesn't have nearly as much of an effect as it has in years past. But the Saints team, I mean, we've seen Derrick Henry absolutely steamroll the Seahawks defense in Seattle as well. We've seen
Najee Harris played good last week.
Najee Harris played good last week. I believe I think it was either Madison or Cook that had a good game. Played
Alexander Madison.
The Seattle team will give great numbers to running back to opponents' running back. So Alvin Kamara is obviously going to get at least 2 touchdowns here, a ton of touches. I'm sure there's going to be some weird Taysom Hill stuff going on. Is this the game that Michael Thomas comes back, or is this next week?
No. He's, like we talked about, he's eligible to return, but I think he's still a week or 2 away, so they will not have Michael Thomas. Maybe he's there next week, maybe the week after, but he's getting closer. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what the Seahawks can do, but the Saints defense isn't terrible.
The Saints defense is what's keeping them in games for the most part, because this offense, across the board, you look at the offense and you're like, oh, that looks like a 5-6 win team, even with but
because Sean Payton is holding Jameis Winston in check. It's the only thing. The only reason he doesn't have 12 interceptions by now is because he's not throwing it enough. And it's smart. But I mean, the Saints. Yeah, I mean, the Saints are a better team. They'll probably win. Could the Seahawks win? Sure. The defense is going to have to, really step it up, make some plays. O-line. It's the same kind of thing with the Seahawks every week, but they have to win a few of these without Russ if they want to have any chance of being a, admirably competitive team.
Because the Niners seem to be pretty much out of the playoff picture, I think. And
I mean the playoff
out for the most part too.
The playoff picture in the NFC, like other than those top 5 teams we talked about, is really freaking open. Because other than the Rams and the Cardinals being 2 teams, it's like every division has like the leader, and then it's like the Saints, like the
NFC
Vikings,
East,
the Seahawks,
South, and North are pretty Decided. Like the Saints team is not going to be. They're going to be.
But then somebody
get 500.
But somebody needs the wild cards. Like it's going to be a lot of. So it's like the Seahawks technically could still. I mean, I think 8 wins might get you an NFC wild card this year. Like especially that 7th seed. There's not a lot of good teams behind these. Teams at the top. So this is a huge win for whoever gets it. Certainly will be down the stretch, but that's going to do it for us this week. Well, I mean, I guess are you in? Are you picking the Saints? We kind of hopped around.
I'm going to. Are you picking the Saints?
I'm picking the Saints.
Just because I think crazy stuff happens in Seattle. I'll give the Seahawks, the tip of the hat here because I think it could happen. Wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't, like you said. But I'll do it kind of just to disagree here because they could win. But that's probably until they play Jacksonville next week. That's probably the only game that I'll consider themselves over their opponent without Russell Wilson.
I've just got a moral thing where I refuse to put faith in Geno Smith. Other than having Tyler Lockett on my fantasy team, but that was
I have DK on one of mine, so
that was accidental. That was accidental. I didn't mean to trust in Geno Smith, which I do not. But that'll do it for us today. We will be with you again on Thursday to preview Week 8 of the NFL season, as well as with you again at the same time next week on Monday to then recap the Week 8 of the NFL season. Remember to follow Dash Sports on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter to keep up with what we're doing, as well as subscribe to the Dash Sports YouTube channel and check out the dashsports.tv website to stay up to date on everything Dash Sports, including some great Pac-12 coverage from some fans that I'm sure. I mean, I get the alerts for the live videos, and it seems like everything is just some Pac-12 fan just in sorrow, because that's kind of what the Pac-12 is this year. But, stay up on that if that's what you're into. But until Thursday, when we will see you again, bring your fantasy football questions, tweet them at one of us. We'll get them locked and loaded. Come and join the